While I might enjoy teaching thinking tricks the most, the tricks that my dogs will most frequently do are definitely tricks for balance, strength, and coordination. Those are definitely tricks with the most practical value, as they are great for cross-training your dog, for conditioning your dog, for keeping your dog fit and strong through their whole career. I think this is very important part for any agility dog, and my puppies master those tricks way before they do any kind of jumping, and I very often do those tricks as either conditioning or warming up before their agility runs, in order to make sure that they're really prepared for their job on agility course. And I think in a big part I can thank those tricks for the fact that my dogs are normally competing until very old age. Lo, for example, was competing on normal height until she was 12, and Lai is now 10 and still one of the fastest dogs in the world. I think partly thanks to the tricks.
When I first started teaching tricks 10 years ago, I really did it just for fun. And it was only through years that I learned about all the important side effects of tricks. And balance, strength, and coordination are definitely one of the most important, if not the most important, side effect of teaching tricks. I believe that pretty much every trick, even if it doesn't look strictly connected to that, actually helps a little bit with your understanding of their bodies. But in this video, I really tried to gather the tricks that are most closely related to balance, strength, and coordination, and are actually a very important part of conditioning program of my dogs. Of course, together with off-leash running on our daily walks, together with swimming, and together with exercises on a ball. And more about that you can see in Ready Steady Go video. In this video we'll be focusing on tricks. The good thing about tricks is that you don't need much room, you don't need much time, and you can still do a lot. You can do a lot in order to keep your dog injury free, fit, and in good condition to do agility. I tried to put the tricks in chapters and decide which are the most important ones for balance, strength, and coordination. But actually, it's all connected. So every trick that we'll be working on in strength chapter actually also helps with balance and coordination. And the other way around too. It's actually all related. I just chose this to put them in some kind of an order. And you can teach them in pretty much any order that you want. Some tricks will require the tricks that we discussed in earlier chapters, but you can mix them up as much as you want and just go with and just start with whatever sounds the most fun. Because yes, tricks are definitely a lot of fun and a great preparation for agility. We can actually teach many agility behaviors through tricks, and the body awareness is definitely a very important thing that they can learn through tricks. If possible, I would advise, of course, to shape those tricks too, especially those that are related to coordination, because if they want to know what their hind feet are doing, they really need to think about their hind feet versus being lured in that or another direction. So definitely try to shape coordination tricks. But for example, in the strength chapter, you will see me suggest luring on some places because, again, it's actually a conditioning exercise. Of course, we are doing it as a trick to make it more fun for the dog. But it's no big deal if you want to use a lure here and there in the tricks that are described in balance and strength chapters. You will also often hear a word of warning to work on both sides equally, because normally dogs will prefer one side, and if you just go with that side and practice that side only, you will actually get a dog that is not really well balanced. So you don't want to do that. You actually want to practice the weaker side more, because the final goal is the dog who can perform equally well on both sides in order to avoid injuries or overuse of one side. Also, definitely add difficulties gradually. Don't overdo it. It's all those tricks are great practice if, of course, you do it in moderation. If you do too much too soon, if you push for too much, the dog will end sore and you are actually asking for injuries. So make sure that you add difficulties gradually, that you give your dog enough breaks in between. So don't practice a trick every day, but practice, I don't know, 3 times a week. And mix the tricks up a little bit. So don't work on just one and every day, but do one day one trick and another one another, then give them a break, and then again return to the first trick, do the second one, and things like this. Mix it up a little bit, and yeah, make it easy and fun for the dog, of course. Make sure that the dog is enjoying it, and make sure that he's not sore after. Normally, as soon as I see that they are having some difficulties with the sit-up, for example, if they normally are very good at it, but then I see they're a little bit hesitant about it, or they can't keep the balance for that long, I will immediately stop a session, give them a break, and then try again later, because it's always a sign that something is maybe not completely as it should. So definitely a word of warning is important with those tricks. You want to build muscle, you don't want them to be sore. So add the difficulties gradually enough that you are being productive, not counterproductive. Those tricks are also very good for puppies, and actually we do lots of them in puppy class already. But with puppies, it's even more important to do it in moderation, to give them enough breaks in between, and to not do too many repetitions. A little bit is okay, it's challenging, it helps them to build muscle and coordination and everything, but yeah, don't overdo it. With puppies, it's especially important to do everything in moderation, to challenge them, but not make them sore. If you take it easy and do it in moderation, those tricks are actually the best possible preparation for agility. And in my classes, those tricks are actually a requirement for my students before they can start with agility, because I think it really prepares them for what we'll be asking from them in agility. And I actually keep doing those tricks through their whole career to keep them in a good condition. I also believe that balance, strength, and coordination are very important elements of speed. So if you have any kind of problems with speed on a course, those are definitely the tricks that you want to master. They can really make a great difference. I think that it's not just a coincidence that all my dogs are setting really good times in trials. I think all the tricks that they do really helps with that a lot. And of course, they're fun. They build a great relationship, a great bond. So definitely something that you do want to do with puppies too. Have fun! Let's start with something easy, like backing up. That's one of the first tricks that I teach to my puppies. Usually I get first steps when I'm actually working on ignore that foot right in front of your nose game. So when I'm teaching a puppy that the way to get that to that foot that is right in front of their nose is not by staring at it or pawing at it or trying to get to directly get it, but to try something else. Very often what I first get it is a step back. And of course you want to click that first step back. The important thing about clicking the first step back is that if you don't click the first one, very often then they sit. So don't ask for too much. As always with shaping, you need to be to take things easy, to be patient, and be happy with small things like one step. It's actually very easy then to add more and more, so don't worry about that just yet. Just try to think of a situation where your dog will back up. One situation is the one I already mentioned, so having foot right in front of their nose and seeing if they will offer backing away from it. If not, you can maybe think of something they do in their normal life, like backing out of the room when you are trying to go out of it. My dogs always do it when we are going out of the dog food room, and they will just back up out of it in order to keep their eyes on their bowls. So that's another situation where you can find it. Or you can of course shape it by watching the dog's feet and clicking any kind of movement with hind feet. I'm trying to show the process of shaping here with Boo. Of course, she already knows to back up on verbal cue, but here we are trying to get her to back up without knowing what she's doing. She finds backing up too easy, so she's trying many different things. But as you can see, I don't care if she's doing something else at the same time. I'm just focusing on hind feet and clicking movements back. And yes, once the dog understands that you are clicking the step back, not sitting or downing or whatever, then things actually get pretty easy. You just wait a little bit longer and a little bit longer before you click. The important thing though is that you click when the dog is still moving backwards, of course. The most common mistake that I see is that the dog is backing up nicely for 3-4 steps, then the dog stops and the handler quickly clicks and rewards. And of course, if you are clicking when the dog is already stopped, then you are teaching them to back up and stop. So you don't want to do that, because then it will be harder to add distance, especially without the stopping in between. The dog will keep stopping, thinking for which stop they will get the click. So make sure the legs are still moving when you click. If the dog stops already, wait for the next step and then click that, but do not click if the hind legs are not moving. Another trick to add distance is to reward the distance. Many people reward click and then have the dog come back to their hand for a reward. But actually it will be much easier to get the distance if you are rewarding away. Then the dog won't be so much in a hurry to come back for that reward. But expecting the reward away from you will make them go further and further. So I definitely recommend tossing treats on the floor, like I do here with Boo, already right from the start. It of course gets a little bit more complicated once you get a lot of distance, because especially with food it's hard for them to still sit, especially on grass or something like this. So I actually very soon switched to a toy. It's much easier to toss the toy, right? And it's much easier for them to see it. So as soon as the dog knows what it is about and is backing up nicely some steps, definitely try to do it with a toy. However, if you won't be able to shape those steps back, you can of course also try to help a little bit. You can, for example, try to help by stepping towards the dog. Very often if the dog is standing in front, but make sure that he is standing. If the dog is sitting, then it's very hard to do the step back. So make sure the dog is standing and then try to step towards the dog. Very often the dog will move out of your way, so then you can click and reward that. The only problem is that very often they sit. So if they do one step back, that's good. You can click and reward that. If they sit immediately, then you will need to do something else. I tried to show this here with B, but the problem is she was already reading that must be back, and she was backing up on her own. So I then tried to show the luring. That worked better. She doesn't know the luring into back, and first she sits down because the lure is too high. Then she lies down because the lure is too low. And then we find the good height for her to back up. Just for your information, what you're doing wrong. So if the dog is sitting, then the lure is too high. If the dog is lying down, the lure is too low. You need to keep the head in the normal position and just push towards the dog so that he moves away, and then you can click and reward moving away. First you are clicking the first step back, so as soon as the dog steps back on the pressure with your hand, click and reward. But then don't step back again and pull the dog forward, but keep walking. So don't do one step back and one forward and one step back and one forward, but keep walking backwards, rewarding every step to start with, and then every second, every third, and then adding more and more. As soon as the dog is fluently backing up with a lure, try it with an empty hand, so nothing in your hand, and then slowly put your hand away. I normally first put it between the knees so that the hand is not so obvious anymore, but the position is very similar. And then I just keep the hands behind the back and walk into the dog. So we are now back to walking into the dog. And then you just follow the same steps, reward the distance, ideally with a toy, and add more and more steps with you not moving anymore or just moving minimally and then less and less. This should be enough for you to teach a really nice long backing up. If you have a problem with the dog curving a lot to one side or another, you can first try it in a corridor, like between the wall and the car, or between a sofa and a wall, or anything narrow that you can find to keep the dog straight. Then slowly fade it, keep the obstacle only on the side the dog is normally curving into, because they normally curve in one or another direction. And then you just try without. It's usually easy once they have a good coordination, so I don't worry about a little curve at the beginning. It usually goes away with more experience and better coordination. For those who already trained back and are ready for some new challenges, Here are some. So one of the challenges would be backing up in down position. So in this situation, I tell the dog to down first, then back, and then immediately down again. Some dogs will stand up in between. When they hear back, they will stand up. So yes, for this trick, you already need back on verbal cue. You will still get standing up at the beginning, but just insist. So down, back, and immediately down as soon as the dog is standing up. Once they start to expect the pattern, they will realize there is no need to stand up and will stay in down position. So you can then add more and more steps into backing up into down. If you get in trouble, the easiest way to get it is again with a lure on very, very low, pretty much on the ground actually, and moving into the dog so much that they need to do one step back in order to get it. And then yes, again, just adding more and more steps and fading the lure. Then another one that you can try is backing up the stairs. It's again more difficult because there are some obstacles on the way to climb, and actually I only recommend doing this after you master the 2-on-2-off trick that will be discussed a little later. So the dog already knows putting hind feet on an object, and then it's much easier. This is first time La is doing this trick, and as you can see, she has no problems, but of course she already knows back and she knows 2-on-2-off. One-to-off is usually trained as a position to use on contacts, so dog walk and day frame. But of course, since my dogs have running contacts, I don't need it for that reason. But I still teach it to all my puppies as a rear end awareness exercise. They need to know very well where their hind feet are in relation to that object, and how to keep them on that object. So I like to teach this trick to all my puppies, and actually already very early in the process. It's actually an easy one. Again, I teach it by shaping. So I take an object that is higher as the ground, but not too high, especially not for small puppies. And then I will click for 1, 2, 3, 4 feet on it. Usually that's an easy part. Young puppies will usually like to investigate a new object. So 2 front feet on will probably be very easy to get. In case you can't get hind feet, you are probably using either too high or too small object. So try with something as low as you can see here in the video of La, and maybe bigger to start with. So as soon as you have 4 feet on an object, reward that at first, and then wait for the puppy to get bored and to go off the object. And as soon as front feet are off the object, and that's another reason why you want a low object, because if you use a higher object, puppy will very likely jump off the object. You don't want that, because then you can't catch this moment of front feet on the ground, hind feet on the object. With a lower object, you probably won't get jumping off, but stepping off, and then you should be fast enough to click that moment when front feet are already leaving and hind feet are still on the object. Click that, and ideally also reward when the dog is still in this position, meaning that at the beginning you need to be very close to an object. so that you can be very quick with the delivery of the reward, rewarding when the dog is still in a position several times to help them memorize the position, and it's good. And then already at this stage, actually, you can also introduce a release word saying go when you want the dog to leave, and also click and reward leaving as such. This will be actually only important if you will be using it for agility, well, why not train two things at the same time? So waiting in a position and then releasing on a specific verbal cue. Once you do enough rewarding in that position, the puppy will offer stopping in this position on their own. So at the beginning they stop because you basically stop them with a clicker and then delivery of the reward. And once they start to anticipate treats in this position, they will stop in this position on their own, and also offer it on objects, like you can see in this video of Flash. You will climb on it, turn and go into the position that I'm still rewarding in a position a little bit, and then rewarding the release. Once at this stage, you have two ways to go. So one way to go is in the direction of the handstand. For this, you need a dog to know to also step back on the object, but this will be discussed in another trick called handstand that you will see in strength chapter. So maybe a few words about the other way that you can use this trick, and that's for agility. If you'll be using it for agility, it's important that they also know how to get into the position normally and with speed, not always going on an object and then turning and stopping, but also coming to the object like I'm showing here. I'm actually using a simple carpet taped to the floor because any other object is sliding too much when she starts off. But again, it's not important with object you can use. You can use anything you can find at home, make it fixed, and then have the dog run into the position, first rewarding in a position and rewarding the release, then rewarding the position less and less, and mostly rewarding the release, and also make a stay more difficult. Here you can see that I'm throwing the treats already in advance. As she's running in a position, she needs to stop anyway, and then I say go, and she can get the treat that I threw already. I'm also separating it from my position. You can see me moving a little bit away. Still rewarding in a position here and there, but mostly rewarding by releasing her to a treat that was thrown in advance, and she still stopped in the position that she knows. This is then very, very easy to transfer to agility equipment. This is my favorite rear end awareness trick, and those who have my healing video already know it really well. But even if you are not planning to teach healing, I definitely recommend teaching this trick because it's great for rear end awareness, and it's another really cool shaping trick. Of course, you could lure it by moving yourself around the target and having them follow, but I would really recommend shaping this one so that they really get to think about their hind feet. It's one of the first tricks that I start shaping with my puppies. Here you can see Le at 8 weeks of age, not knowing at all what we are doing on that ball just yet, but look, here we got some steps. It's of course purely accidental, but well, you have to start somewhere, right? And at the end of this session, you will already see her first steps on purpose. So it's within this session that she got what I'm going for. But at the beginning here I'm clicking for anything, for weight shifts, for head turns, any movement that she produces, because this will eventually give you a step. See, here we got really nice 2 steps. And from this moment on, it's pretty easy to get a few steps left and few steps right. The problematic part is usually getting from few steps to the full circle, because usually they want to keep eye contact and don't want to turn away from us. That's why it's very important that you reward with the head turned in the direction the dog is going next. So you can see here that I'm not rewarding from in front of me, but if possible away, and definitely so that I'm promoting the direction that she's going towards. So if she's going towards the left, I'm rewarding with her head to the right, because that promotes getting more steps in that direction. Ideally, the dog is offering both directions, and then you can reward some of one direction and some of another. But usually they have a preference for one direction over the other. That's fine, but definitely try to keep an eye on the other direction, and jackpot if you get any steps in the other direction. You will see that happening in this session. She is still preferring one direction, and in this direction I'm already asking for a full circle before I reward. But once she offers the other direction, I'm of course much more generous with the rewards, and I'm rewarding pretty much every step in the other direction. That's pretty much it. You want the dog to be able to circle in both directions fluently. The good thing about this exercise is that they really need to think about their hind legs, and that since front feet are pretty much static and hind feet need to do all the work, they really need to know really well where those hind feet are and how to use them. So definitely a trick that you want to start with already with little puppies, or if you have an adult dog, of course, you should just go for it too. It's never too late to learn a new trick. This trick looks really fancy, but it's actually easier as it looks like. It's a very easy one for dogs who mastered circling the target well. So this is definitely something you want to teach first. Once the dog is fluent circling the target in both directions, just put yourself into the picture, put yourself next to the target, and only click when they come all the way to your leg. And once they are at your left leg, just cue them to go to the other leg. You can use the hand gesture for that, and then reward for getting to your other leg. Don't reward for any steps in between, just for coming all the way to your leg. And once they can do that, you are ready for the next step, fading the target. So make the target lower and lower until you get to a completely flat target, and then eventually just a piece of paper that you are making smaller and smaller. And once the dog can do nice switches from one leg to another, like you can see in this video of Little Lamb, You are ready for the next step. And the next step is that once the dog is in a side position, nicely parallel to you, you use your hand to turn the head out a little bit, out meaning away from you, because if the head goes away from you, when you cue back, the hind end will come to you. So turn the head out, step with the other leg backwards, and cue a dog to back up. So backing up is another trick that you want to master first. But then you just put everything together. So asking the dog for coming from front position to side position. That's the part that they learn on a target. Then help with a hand turning their head out so that the rear end comes in. But help additionally by stepping back with your leg so that the dog comes in between and into front position, and then once he's in a front position, ask to come to the other leg, and then again step back with the other leg, tell the dog to back up, and then just put everything in a full figure eight. Fade the hand signals a little bit, and then don't reward every figure eight anymore, but put more and more together so that the dog gets more fluent. If the dog backs up in a straight line instead of coming in between your legs, you don't turn the head of the dog out enough. It should be easy with smaller dogs, but it is a little bit more complicated with bigger dogs. So another way to help them is to position yourself into a corner so that you have a wall behind your back, and the dog actually can't back up in a straight line, and he doesn't have any other option as coming in between your legs. If, of course, you step back with the other leg far enough, ideally all the way to the wall, so the dog really doesn't have the other option as coming in between. And then, of course, a reward for coming in between first, but don't reward it too often, because if you will be rewarding coming in between, they often start to back up too far, and then it's actually harder to get them back to the side. So as soon as the dog is nicely coming in between your legs, when you don't have a problem with this anymore, with the dogs backing up in a straight line, don't reward in front position anymore, but immediately ask the dog for coming to the side, and then reward at your side. Because you don't want the dog to at any point go too far from your legs. The further they go from your legs, the harder it is to come back. So you want to promote them staying as close as possible the whole time. So reward close to you, ideally with a dog at your left or right leg. And of course, the reason why you want to teach this trick is not just because it looks fancy. It's a really good rear end awareness. It challenges their understanding of where their hind feet are, what they are doing. They need to change direction twice, and to know how to stay close to your leg. So definitely a trick that you want to try. Four in is one of the first tricks that I teach to my puppies, mostly because it starts as a really easy shaping trick and is a great introduction to shaping for dogs new to the concept. But if you put a big box on the floor, the puppy will very likely go and investigate it, and that's your chance to click and reward any interaction with the box. So not only that this will eventually become a balancing trick, It's also a great trick to teach them to interact with new, maybe strange objects. The best is if you can use different materials and shapes of boxes so that they get used to all the materials and shapes and sounds that it might make when they step into it. I start off with a really big box. Actually, just take the biggest one that you can find. The bigger the box, the easier it is to get that third paw in. Normally, it's very easy to get the sniffing and then one paw and two paws in. The hardest is usually the third one, especially if you start with two small bugs. Of course, with the dogs who understand shaping well, you can afford starting off with the smaller box, but with new dogs, make sure the box is big enough that the chances are that the dog will step in with all four. And then, of course, you want to jackpot that. Once the dog gets the idea that it's about going into it with all 4 feet and will offer it consistently, you're ready for the next size. So the best is to have the whole collection of boxes of different sizes, and the easiest to transfer the behavior to a new box is actually to put a new box into an old one, like you can see in this video of little Le. I think she's 10 or 11 weeks here. And of course I did this trick before. I'm just showing the process of making the boxes smaller and smaller, rewarding her for staying in the position. So always reward in a box once the dog is proposing going in with all 4 feet, of course. The process of making boxes smaller and smaller is usually pretty easy. It gets hard once you get to the sizes that get physically challenging for the dogs, meaning that as long as you have a big box where the dog can comfortably stand in with 4 feet, it's really easy. But once you get to sizes where 4 feet are very close together, it gets very challenging for their balance. Normally at the beginning they will offer sit in a box, and that's fine, but of course at one point or another they will need to stand up. You can promote it by rewarding very low to the ground. If you're rewarding high, that promotes sitting, so you can try low rewarding, but that way or another at one particular size they will need to stand in with all 4 feet. So don't worry about sitting down. Focus on making the box smaller and smaller gradually enough that the dog is mostly successful. And just add difficulties gradually. Be patient. This is something that understanding is not enough. They need to learn how to balance. They need to find their balance and how to stand in that little thing. So especially at the end, you need to progress very slowly, and don't overdo it. Again, it's a physically challenging trick for a dog, so you don't want to do a million repetitions every day. Give a dog some rest in between one and another session. Don't overdo with how many repetitions you do, but definitely do some of it every here and there, because it's a really great balancing exercise, and it's really great for muscles in their back and in front end, because most of the weight will be on front end in those exercises. From that reason, 4 in a small bowl like this is actually related to a handstand, and you will actually see La doing some handstands once we get to the smallest bowl. So again, don't overdo it, and of course when you are introducing such a small bowl as this one, you definitely need to lower the criteria a little bit again. Don't wait for 4 feet in, but reward every good attempt. So whenever you see the dog is thinking to put 4 feet in, that's good enough when you come to the sizes like this. And then from thinking to actually getting 3 and then 4 feet in shouldn't be too far. If you see the dog is struggling too much and it's physically too hard for the dog to do it at this size, just go one size back, do some more work there, add some more duration, and then try a smaller bowel later. Or even better, try to find a bowel that is somewhere in between the two sizes. Roll that ball is another great balancing trick. To start with, hold a ball with your feet so that it's easier for the dog to step on it with 2 front feet. That's your first goal. 2 front feet on a ball. As soon as you have it, start releasing the ball a little bit. So allow the ball to move some. Because if you will be clicking for too long, for standing on the ball with 2 front feet, what you will get is a dog thinking he needs to stand statically on it, and once you release the ball, they will just slide off of it. So as soon as they know it's about 2 front feet on a ball, release it a little bit so that they will feel movement under their feet, and that might provoke a little movement of front feet. Definitely jackpot that. Once they know it's about moving front feet on a ball, try releasing it more and more so that they can start rolling it a little bit. Some dogs will prefer rolling it forward, some dogs will prefer rolling it backwards. It doesn't really matter, you can teach both, but first just go with whatever the dog offers first. Click for little steps on the ball, and then just add more and more steps before you click and reward. The trick is easier for smaller dogs, or let me say it's easier on bigger balls, meaning that with bigger dogs, a kid's ball like this might not be perfect to start with. It's easier to start with something bigger. You could even start with one of the balancing balls. But then you do want to try smaller balls too. You will see me trying it with La on a tennis ball. The smaller the ball, the harder it is to stay on it. But so definitely start with a bigger one, but you do want to try smaller ones too. Again, you can let them choose the direction and style how to roll the ball. You will see that with Boo we had problems with her sitting down, and then she had problems with moving backwards while sitting down. So I tried to reward lower in order to prevent sitting. And then what I got then was a kind of downing and rolling it back in a kind of down position. But that's fine, I just let her do it as long as the dog can move smoothly either backwards or forward. I let them choose how they want to do it. For an extra challenge, you can teach them to roll the ball to a particular goal, or you can try to teach them to roll the ball with hind feet. That should be fun. Standing on the side legs, I teach us side version of two on 12. To start with this trick though, you need to first teach a dog backing up into a normal two on 12, meaning stepping back on an object with hind feet first. If your dog didn't master that just yet, definitely see coordination chapter first and work on that first and then come back for side legs. It's much easier to start with those if the dog already knows the hind legs lifts, and that's the one that they will learn in coordination section. Once they know that, it's actually a pretty easy trick, but it takes a while because it takes quite some balance and strength. But here you can see pretty much the whole process with Little Lamb. In the first step, I'm positioning her sideways to her two on 12 object, meaning she already stepped back with hind feet on that object. But we are here trying to get just one hind foot on an object for the first time. As you saw, she was first trying to go on with both hind feet. Yeah, just wait for one. Either click as soon as they go on with one leg, or click when they slide down and one leg finishes on the floor. And that's why I like to use an angled object. If you will use a box or a drawer on the floor or a pillow on the floor, you will very likely get 4 feet on. And if you angle it like I did with this cushion here, then you limit the dog's options on what to offer on that object. So 4 on is off, and she's trying some of 2 on to off, but definitely you will get enough of just one leg on that you will have a good start into that. So click anytime that one hind leg is on, and add duration as soon as possible, meaning that if the dog keeps the hind foot on an object while you are rewarding him, you can click and reward again, and then click and reward again, so that the dog realizes that it's about keeping the hind foot on an object. Once you have this understanding of one hind foot on the object, you can try to get a front foot too. You can either, if the dog understands paw targeting or give me 5 or give me a paw trick, you can cue them that way. Or you can just wait for the lift of front foot. It usually happens very, very soon if you are rewarding close enough to an object. So again, the reason why we are positioning the dog sideways to an object this time is to avoid both hind feet on an object, and secondly, you want the head close enough to an object too, because that will very often make them lift front foot up in the air too, and you can of course jackpot that. So again, the place to reward is as close to an object as possible, because that will heighten your chances of front foot lift. Once they know it's about hind and front foot, you will sometimes also get them to lift at the same time. This is another thing that you want to jackpot. So whenever you see hind and front foot leaving the floor at the same time, definitely click and jackpot. Ideally, you click it even before they touch an object, because you want them to understand it's about feet lifts and not so much about touching the object. The more often you click before they touch an object, the easier it will be to fade an object. But at this point, again, what you want are hind and front feet leaving the ground at the same time. You can leave the object there for a dog support a little bit longer, but you can slowly make them higher and higher, meaning put them under more and more of an angle, because more of an angle there will be, the less the dog can lean on it, and the more they will need to balance on the remaining legs. Usually this process is pretty easy, and it's pretty easy to get from an angled pillow or a drawer or a plank to a wall or another vertical object. The hard step is usually then fading that one, so you need to go gradually with that one. The easiest is if you make them less dependent on an object as such, by varying, by using different objects. The more different objects that you use, the less dependent the dog will be on an object as such, and the easier it will be to transfer to objects that offer less support. By less support, I mean that the object is either that thin or that slippery that the dog can't really lean on it. So you can see me trying it on different kind of dog food container and a chair, and also on my legs. The good thing about doing it against your legs is that you can feel really well how much weight the dog is putting on you, and then you can click the moments where you feel the dog is pretty much standing on their own, not putting too much weight on you. So you definitely want to try against your legs too. And then another great object for fading the object for side legs is a chair, because it looks like an object, but it doesn't offer much support, because other than those two legs, it's an empty object. So it's mostly there just for the moral support of the dog. It's just much easier to get them offer the behavior against an empty object like a chair as without an object. So a chair is a great next step. Then you can try it against table leg or a pole or something really minimalistic, and by that time probably they also understand the verbal to some degree, so you can try it without an object next. Now the verbal, I introduced the verbal as soon as the dog is lifting both legs up in the air at the same time. So before they can balance on them on the legs, on the remaining legs on their own. I name it that soon because fading the object is easier then. You can use two different names for two different sides, or you can use just one word and point with your finger which side you want. I actually do have two different names, but they are not really good at knowing which is which, so I always help with pointing the side I want them to lift. After mastering side legs, diagonal legs should be very easy. The only thing that you really need to start with is a dog knowing to put a paw in your hand. So if the dog doesn't know that yet, to give you a paw, you definitely want to teach that first. You can again just use a paw target. You can first teach them to touch a paw target on the floor, and then keep the paw target in your hand and have them touch it. then add a little bit of duration, and then you are pretty much ready for diagonal legs already. So once the dog knows to put a paw in your hand, just do the same thing close to an object that you were using for side legs at one point. So you do want to train side legs to some degree already, so that the object on their side will immediately remind them of lifting the hind foot on. But ask for front foot first, because if you try to get hind foot first, normally what will happen is you will get side legs, or maybe the normal two-on-two of hind legs on an object. So to limit the dog's options, how many feet to put on that object, try to ask for front foot in your hand, as that will make it impossible for the dog to go on the object with both side legs, and will probably go for hind foot. Click and reward lifting hind foot, and then simply just add duration first, clicking and rewarding several times for holding the position. And then you can also try selecting for tries where you feel that the dog is not leaning on your hand too much. So when you feel that there is not too much weight on your hand and the dog is balancing on the remaining two legs, definitely click and reward that, because your next step is fading the hand support. Meaning that you are still doing diagonal close to an object where the dog can lean the hind foot on, but try to get rid of the hand. Use it as a hand cue to for the dog to give you a paw, but try to reward when they're not leaning on you too much. And eventually ask them to hold front foot in the air on their own while hind foot is still leaning. And then, fading the hind foot object is again the next step. And you just do it the same as with the side legs. So first go from the object that offers a lot of support to an object that offers less support. So if you were using, I don't know, a box first, secondly go to the wall, and then go to something like a chair or a table leg or something that the dog can't really lean on. Jackpot any simultaneous lifts of both diagonal legs at the same time. And then just slowly add duration to freestanding diagonal. For dogs, adding duration to diagonal legs is actually easier as to side legs. It's just easier for them to balance that way as to balance on side legs. So adding duration shouldn't be too difficult, but of course, as always, it takes some time for them to have the balance and strength to do so. So definitely don't rush it and just add it very, very gradually. But they normally really get the idea very soon. What you were watching before was second and fifth session for little leg. She never did diagonal legs before, but she of course knows side legs already. So it was very easy to get the diagonal legs up. But as you can see, in fifth session we are still struggling with keeping the balance and staying on diagonal legs any longer, as just a little bit. On the other hand, here you can see Boo's second session on these two diagonal legs, but she already knows the other two diagonal legs up. So this was very, very easy, and she was already offering so much of freestanding diagonals that I, within that session, already moved to to a wall that offers even less support as the other wall with the stone with the stones does. And yes, her balance and strength was really good considering that we didn't do that side before yet. So with her it was very easy then to fade the object and just have her stand on these two diagonal legs too. And yes, with Boo we first mastered one side of diagonals and only then went to teach the other side too. But I do recommend to start with both at the same time. It's actually easier and the process is even shorter. So try to do one session on one diagonal and another session on the other diagonal. As always, be flexible with your training, meaning that you might need to adjust the steps a little bit to your dog. For example, with Boo and La, I actually started this trick the other way around, meaning first I was clicking for one hind foot on an object, and then I asked for front paw in my hand. But when I tried it with Le, I've got a problem of not getting one foot on the object, but getting both side legs and both hind legs and everything else, just not just one foot. So it's actually with her that I adjusted the method and started with front foot. And then I immediately got the hind foot and diagonal legs on. So the first session, all I was dealing with was trying to isolate that one hind foot on. And when I finally gave up on that and started with front foot, it gave me diagonal legs right away. So again, dogs are different and different things might work for them. Yeah, with her it was definitely much easier to start with front foot on an object first. And as you can see, I went the same way with Bee, only that I have her paw on a pillow instead of my hand, because, well, she's just scratching too much and the pillow was more comfortable as having her head on my hand or on my legs. Once that they can hold the diagonal legs up a little bit, it's also time to name the trick. You can either simply call it by names of the legs they're giving, like Bee, for example, she knows 1, 2, 3, 4 for as the names of the 4 legs. So I'm just calling a diagonal 1 and 3 and 2, 4. I just ask for hind foot first and then immediately for the front foot, and that's her cue for diagonal. With other dogs, I will just use one name for diagonal. I'm using D as short for diagonal, and then I will just say another for the other diagonal, and I will just go with whichever they offer first. I don't really care, but again, you do want to work on both sides. And as usually they are better on with one side, and that only means that you need to do some more work on the other side. This is a really fun trick. To make it easier to start with, we will start as a 4 on trick. So a trick very related to 4 in actually. So you definitely want to master 4 in first, and then 4 on should be easy. To add additional challenge here, I'm using some shakier objects, meaning some balance discs. If you don't have those, you can simply try it on a pillow or something like this. Anything soft will do. And first start with a big enough object that they can comfortably stand on it with all 4 feet. Click for investigating it, for putting 1 foot on, 2, 3, and eventually 4. And once they master 4 feet on, you can try to make an object a little bit smaller, try to limit the size a little bit. In this video you will see the progression from a big balance disc to those 4 little balance discs, and then I will make it smaller by putting 2 away. So now we are only having 2, so much less room for her to go on. But since she's really good at 4 in, I'm pretty sure she can master this. If you don't have objects like this, as I said, you can use a pillow, and then you can just limit the space on a pillow by putting a box or something on one end. And then at one point you will need to find something small. If you don't have anything shaky and small, you can of course just try with a normal object like an upside down bowl or anything like this. You can basically use your 4 in object turned upside down and have them step on it. When working on a really small object like this, I'm not adding a height. So for jumping on your feet, you actually don't want to, you don't need to work towards such a small object. I'm showing it here, and I'm doing some with my dogs just because it's another fun trick and it's another great balancing trick. But you actually don't need to go to such extremes. If you see that handstand. Anyway, size is one of the challenges. Shakiness is another one of the challenges. And the next challenge that you want to introduce after you master those 2, so always work on size first, then maybe on shakiness and softness, and only then try adding height. When you are adding height, don't make it too difficult. Don't go for too small objects. Find something that is about of size of your feet, or a little bit smaller to prepare them for feet really well. Here you can see last first session on adding height to her 4 on. You can go a little bit more progressively as that. It really depends a lot on the dog. With my border collies, I actually needed to go quite slowly, and this trick really took me quite some time. That's why I put it among advanced tricks. But actually, for my Pyrenean Shepherds, that's not a really advanced trick. It's pretty natural for them to jump on everything that can be jumped on. So I have to admit that you will see all the sessions that I ever did with Le on this topic in this video. Basically, I got her to jump on my feet in her second session. So here you can see her first session, adding height, having her jump on something small. And normally I would go more gradually then and try another little higher object, not smaller as this one though. This is small enough. You don't need smaller as that. You actually don't want smaller as that, because it just gets more dangerous that a dog is not jumping on but falling off, and you really don't need that. So this is small enough. You would normally want to make it a little higher next, but it's sometimes hard to find appropriate objects and make them stable enough already. This is a kind of hard to fix. So what I actually did in the next session was already try jumping on the feet. To make it a little easier, the best is to start it the other way around, so that you are lying on your stomach, so that the dog is only jumping the height of from your knee to heel. It's easier, of course, if you have a helper so that you can help the dog to jump on. So if you get a volunteer to lie on the stomach and have your dog jump on, on his or her feet, definitely take this opportunity. Reward for jumping on, reward a couple of times for staying in, and then try again. And once the dog is fluent for this, you can try the same thing with you lying on your stomach and the helper helping the dog to jump on your feet. But again, I was jumping steps because jumping on things is so natural for this breed, and I just went directly to me lying on my back and the helper helping her to jump on it and to reward her when in the position. Yeah, once you have this, the only thing you still need to do is feed the helper. So you should try having a helper stand further and further from your legs. And now it's not the helper anymore that is cueing the dog to jump on. It's you who cue the dog to jump on, but then the helper comes and rewards the dog in a position and then again moves away and comes back when necessary. And when the dog is okay with the helper relatively far and jumping on your feet, you stop rewarding in a position because it's hard to reward up there. Just click for jumping on and then lower your legs, have them jump off and reward from your hand, as you were able to see in the beginning videos of La and Boo, who already know this trick. And with B, I tried some but changed my mind because it's really not so easy to hold a dog in this position. So with heavier dogs, you might want to think twice if you really want to teach that trick. You can of course try, but I definitely recommend trying when lying on your stomach first. It's easier to keep the legs that way, and you can actually lean them against a chair or something for heavier dogs. With Le, I was not expecting any problems because she's really small and light, but as you saw, my legs were pretty shaky actually. So it's not as easy as I thought, even with a light dog. So be careful. You don't want your legs to go so shaky that the dog is falling off. So a little bit attention with this exercise, if possible, the helper next to your legs to catch the dog if necessary. And yeah, be prepared. It's not easy to be in this position, but as I said, how hard or not it is to get a dog to actually do the behavior depends a lot on the dog. For some dogs like Boo, who lack confidence a little bit and are unsure about new and shaky objects, it can take a while. And with my Pyrenean Shepherds, it was actually a very basic trick because, as I said, you can see the whole training process here. It only took 2 sessions, and that's where we are now. Sit-up is the most basic strengthening trick. There are actually many ways how to teach it. It's not very difficult. It's a little bit longer if you shape it, but still, since I have time, I just shape it with my puppies. Here I am already adding duration to less sit-up, but the first step is to just click when the puppy is in sit position, just click the weight shifting back. And very soon this will come together with one paw in the air. Click and jackpot that. And then with even more of the weight shifting back, you will probably soon get 2 feet off the ground already. Click and reward on that. First, it will be probably very quick, sit up, like you can see in this puppy video of Le. But of course, then you just add duration slowly. It helps a lot if you reward in a position, so not when they go in a sit, but later on when you are adding duration, reach in quickly enough to reward still in a position. Or another way to do it is with a paw target. I'm showing it here with Boo, who knows this trick already. So to make it more difficult, I use this balance disc, and I'm putting a hand first a little lower and then higher and higher, so that eventually she needs to put both feet off the ground. And here I tried to show luring, but I couldn't get my hand close to Le without her offering the sit-up on her own. That's why I then went to plan B and used that balance disc that made it more difficult for her to do the sit-up. And then I was able to show some typical problems when you are trying to lure the sit-up. The most typical problem is definitely the dog standing up. So as you can see, instead of sitting, the hind feet go up like this. This is not good. This is not what you want. It's easier for the dog. That's why you will probably get a lot of that at first. But the important thing is to keep the hand really, really low. As soon as I go with the hand a little bit too high, she stands up. As soon as you see the dog is standing up, sometimes you will get tricked because often they sit up for a moment and then stand up. So as soon as they're standing up, stop rewarding. Only reward if the dog is in sit position with hind feet and then front feet going up a little bit. So here you can see me rewarding the sit as such already, and then the hand just a little bit up and towards the dog in order to keep the sit. If you go with the hand away from the dog will stand up. If you go with the hand too high, the dog will stand up. So it needs to be pretty low and towards the dog. First, again, click and reward even just one foot leaving the ground, and then slowly wait for 2. But actually 1 foot up and sit position is better as 2 feet up and stand position. So be careful to only reward in sit up, keep the hand low enough. And of course, don't ask for too much. For a puppy, with a puppy who is just learning this trick, you will get something like this, something like I'm getting here with Le. She knows this trick already, but because of the balance disc that is moving under her feet, this trick gets just as difficult for her at this stage as it would be for young puppy. So you can start this pretty early, but again, don't ask for too much. Just ask for a quick lift, like you were able to see in puppy videos of Le, and then just slowly build duration from there. It's easier for some dogs, it's easier for smaller and lighter dogs, it's harder for big dogs. So some dogs will maybe even need a little bit of a support. So either put a hand so that they can lean on it and find a balance. Click and reward when you feel they're not leaning too much. Or another way to go is to put the dog in the other direction so that he's facing the same direction as you are, and then put in a sit position right in front of your feet so that the dog can lean on it with his back as they're going in a sit-up position. Or you can do the same with a corner, put the dog in a corner and have them do sit-up there, but you definitely don't want them to fall or something like that. So be careful, make sure the dog is sitting straight. and that he can get a support if needed. And if you see the dog is not sitting straight but is sitting on one side or another, always ask the dog to stand up first and only ask for a sit up when they're sitting straight. They can't hold it otherwise. It's not as easy as it looks with dogs who already have experience with this trick. It's just as difficult as it looks like with Le on that shaky balance disc. So yeah, as always, just go slowly. And once you really master it and it gets too easy, you can add additional challenges such as sit up on a balance disc or doing something while in a sit up, such as a shy trick or weaving the legs or saying prayers or something like this, head shakes too. Anything additionally that the dog has to do while in a sit-up position is additional challenge for their strength and of course also balance. And oh, of course the hack. You also want to try the hack in sit-up position. This is actually a pretty easy tricks for dogs with good sit-up and reasonably light, of course. For heavier dogs, this might be a little bit more advanced, but most dogs, I think, will get it really fast. The direction from sit up to down is easier as the other one, so let's try this one first. Tell the dog to sit up and then to down, showing it with a hand signal to help a little bit. Rewards for a change of the position, no matter how the dog did it. Eventually you want them to go from one position to another without going into sit first or touching the ground with front feet at any point. But at the beginning, of course, reward everything, every change of the position. Then slowly introduce more and more switches between one and another position before rewarding, and try to select for the best changes, the fastest changes, and the changes where the dog is not going into sit position at all. Here I'm showing it with Le, who is doing this for the first time. And as you can see, she has no problems. At the beginning, she was touching the ground a little bit when going from down to sit up, but very quickly I'm getting direct switches and rewarding for the best ones. So I think you won't have any problems with teaching the trick as such, but of course don't overdo it, don't do too many repetitions, especially not with too young dogs. Just build the strength gradually. If you want to add an extra challenge to it, you can try with a dog in a sit-up position on an object. Try first with a solid object and not too high, and then you can also add some height or add the challenge of an object not being completely solid, so using either a pillow or balance disc or something like this that will challenge the dog's balance and strength even more. The higher they need to raise up and the shakier the object is, the harder it is. So add difficulties gradually enough for the dog to not end sore or something. This is actually a kind of a bouncing exercise because, as you can see, The dog is jumping over the leg and then taking off immediately to jump again without the additional stride in between. It requires really good strength in the rear end to be able to do that, especially so many times in a row without break. So again, build it slowly. But technically, it's actually a pretty easy trick to teach. Here you can see the very first lesson with Lamb, and actually she offers it immediately. What else to do with the leg as to jump over, right? And as you can see, I'm rewarding with a toy because it's easier. It's an active, happy trick, and it's actually better to reward with a toy if the dog will play, of course. Again, you can either wait for the dog to jump over the leg, or since it's a really easy trick that is not taking very long, you can also lure it a little bit, help with a toy or a hand signal a little bit to get the dog over the leg. A reward for jumping over without touching the leg on each side for now. And then slowly add the height. Either you can next try sitting on a chair and leaning the leg against the wall, or here I am using this column, as you can see. Yeah, with Les, since she didn't have any problems with me on the floor, I immediately went to standing up, and as you can see, she's still not having any problems with it. This should be a pretty easy part. The more difficult part is then adding more jumps over the leg. You will see she gets a little bit confused on some points, but just add jumps more gradually. Here I overdid a little bit how many times I tried to get her jump over the leg. Try to first just go with one jump, then with two, reward for two for quite some time, then progress to 3, 4, etc. At this point, when just starting off, you will probably get some stride or two in between before taking off again for another jump, but don't worry about it. It will go away. So just keep working like this, and once the dog is anticipating the second and third and fourth jump, they will limit the number of strides, and eventually you will get the bouncing that we are looking for. You can also select for that, meaning that you can do several jumps in a row and reward those where the dog is not taking any steps in between. And then yes, then you just slowly add height, meaning that you hold a leg higher and higher on that wall. And then slowly you fade the wall by moving away, further and further away. So first just a very little bit to just leave a little gap in between your leg and the wall, and then further and further, having the dog still jump over the leg and not rewarding if they are not jumping over. It should be pretty easy. You can actually see the whole process of teaching this trick in this video. So this is her second session, and as you can see, she has no problems with fading the wall. She has some problems with jumping over the other leg, because so far I was only jumping her over the right leg, and now I'm trying to change the legs in between so that she's jumping over over one and another. But as you can see, she is still better jumping over the right leg. I should probably train the left leg a little sooner, but well, we'll get there. As you will see, I will make it a little bit easier by putting her in weight position, and then it will be easier for her to jump the left leg too, and then just put everything together. You can then do some more final touches to the trick, making it look more fluent as it's looking right now. And you can actually later on try to fade the legs all together and have them jump up in the air just like this without the leg. Try to lift the legs less and less every next time, and eventually have them jump in the air on just a verbal cue without your leg. By this you will get a flea trick that Boo will show at the end, so jumping up in the air without your legs. It's a really cool trick too. Well, have fun. As you can see, we mastered the left leg too in this time. We still have some smoothing to do to make it look nicer, but as I said, it's really a pretty easy trick. It was a 2-session trick for little Anne. And now things are getting harder and harder. Actually, it's not so hard for small and light dogs, but this one is quite difficult already for bigger, heavier dogs. So they might need some help to start with. So I'm showing a start with B here, putting her in sit-up position and offering my hand as a support so that she can lean on, and then it's easier for her to stand up. Standing up is actually still easier. That one shouldn't be too difficult. So just tell the dog to put front feet on your hand, and then with the other hand, lure them up into the stand up. You can also give your verbal cue for standing up. You can also help with the other hand, raising the dog up a little bit. Reward for standing up. And then the hard part comes, sitting down again. Now, B already knows this trick, so it was pretty easy to get it here on this video. You might meet more problems as that. Many dogs will just back up and don't want to sit down. If the dog is backing up, you can try it against a wall or a sofa or in a corner so that the dog can't back up so much. And pay a lot of attention to their knees and click and reward for any bending of the knees, because this will eventually lead you into the real sit-up. So first click anything that goes in the right direction, and then of course jackpot the real sitting down, and then again you ask for a stand up, you ask for a sit down, and keep your hand there for a support for now. And once the dog is fluent with when he has your support, try to look for moments that he's not putting too much weight on your hand. You should feel that pretty well, and click and reward those moments, because eventually you want to fade that support. As the next step in fading into the support would be again helping with a lure a little bit, but mostly in order to still give them a little bit of a support. So if your hand is right there, they can still lean a little bit on it with their nose, but now hold the hand so that they can't lean on with their paws. So try to offer the treat from upside down, so that there is no hand where they could lean on. Going up will probably be easy. Going down might take some time. The dog might fall into sit sometimes, but that's fine. Again, it's a strengthening trick, and it takes some time before they have enough muscle to do so. Usually fading the support shouldn't be too difficult. The trickiest part is getting that sit up out of the stand up. For some dogs, it's very hard to understand that they can bend their knees after they already stood up. So maybe additional tip for those who still want bend your knees when you are trying it against the wall. Try to put the dog in a sit-up position and then put the treat just a little bit above their nose. Just enough that they need to stretch up a little bit, but not so much that they would need to stand up. And then as soon as you see them stretching up, immediately lower the hand again and reward for sitting down again. But again, the dog is basically sitting up all the time. He's just stretching up a little bit. Then in the next step, try to lure the dog up a little bit more, still not so much that they would stretch their legs, but just enough to get a little bit of a lift and a little bit of stretching of the knees, and then immediately cue the sit down again and reward in a sit up position. And then you just add more and more of height before you ask the dog for a sit up again. This path is actually much easier and you should definitely try it. The hardest part of this way is to stop the dog quickly enough and ask them for a sit-up quickly enough before they stand up immediately, because many dogs will push up so quickly that it's actually very hard to catch them in the right moment and cue the sit-up again. But definitely worth trying if you will meet problems with bending of the knees while trying them to get down. Later on you can add additional challenges again by either positioning the dog on a softer, shakier object, or you can try to add some height and have them to not only stand up but to actually jump up, as you were able to see with La. So that's additional challenge that you might want to include later on, when of course the dog is already fluent and independent with changing the positions on his own.
Bravo. Sit. Sit. Bravo. Sit. Yeah. Sit.
This one is not easy either. It takes a lot of strength for the dog to be able to move their hind feet while in a sit-up position. And as additional challenge, it's often hard for them to understand what you are clicking when they're in a sit-up position, especially because normally they will first offer front foot movement, and then it's hard for them to isolate that you want those hind feet to move. You can see some of those problems right here with Le doing her first penguin session. Well, again, you definitely want to try this trick because it's great for strengthening and it's really, really cute. But be prepared, it can take a while, just take it easy. Put the dog in a sit-up position, watch hind feet and click for any kind of movement, also if it's just a weight shift. So also the weight shift reward. You can help a little bit by rewarding at the side, so that the dog needs to, in order to get the treat, the dog needs to put the weight on one of the legs, because very often once if you reward like this, that will make them move the other leg. So when they shift the weight to the right leg, the left leg is much easier to be moved. So you might get some little tiny steps like this when you are rewarding at the side. Definitely jackpot the steps. And Then just keep practicing. It takes a little while for them to understand what you're clicking for, because it's again hind feet and there are many other actions going on at the same time. But eventually they will get it. And here, for example, you can already see Lenos, it's about hind feet, and is trying to do some little steps. She's still losing balance a little bit, and she still finds it very hard to move them. But, well, you need to start somewhere, right? Handstand is definitely the hardest from all. I mean, it's actually pretty easy process to teach it, but it's very hard to build enough muscle that they can do a freestanding handstand. But the steps up to the wall are actually pretty easy. It starts as backing up on a low object, like you can see here. You can use even a lower object first, and ideally a soft one. They like it better, like a folded blanket or something like this. Then go to the pillow, make it higher and higher, either by putting something underneath or by angling it, like I just did. But the tricky part when you are angling it like this is that you often get the dog who is climbing on it. So putting one leg on first, then second one, and then climbing higher and higher. So with dogs that have this tendency, definitely use higher object, straight, not angled, just higher and higher. With Leia, I just did it that way because she started pushing off with both feet right from the start. If the dog doesn't do that, if you always get one foot at a time, definitely jackpot whenever you see both feet pushing off at the same time. And if possible, use empty objects such as low table or a chair and then higher table, so that they can't climb. So there is nothing in between where they could put a foot and then climb. Another way to avoid climbing is using your legs. As you can see in this video, I first have legs angled so that she could climb them. She's not climbing it because she knows to just push up. But if you have a dog with climbing tendencies, start with feet so that they can climb them. Then put your legs straight so that they can't climb so well anymore. And then eventually put your legs even more back, like this, so that the dog really can't climb at all anymore and needs to push up all the way in order to get to your knees. It of course works better with smaller dogs. With bigger dogs you can try leaning against the wall and creating this angle or no angle, so that with the full length of your legs. Reward pushes up, especially if the dog pushes up well enough that he is completely vertical. So if the dog is not vertical but diagonal to the wall or your legs or whatever, what you will get is a lot of leaning because they just can't hold it in that way. So it's really important to reward very, very close to an object when you are still using an object, because that will give you more vertical position, and also reward low. because if the head is up, then again the balance is too difficult. Reward very, very low. As you can see, I'm actually simply just tossing treats to the ground. Yes, once you have a good position, a very vertical and stable position, not too much leaning. When you do it against your legs, you can feel it really well. You are ready to start to fade the wall. You can try by moving away from it, like I'm showing here with Boo. So I'm starting close to an object to give her an idea what I want from her, but not just as close that she could lean on it. You can even start by having them lean on it first and then try to have them do a step away, and then definitely reward that. Or another way to try to fade the object is to use thinner and thinner objects. So first you use a wall that offers a very good support. Then you can use a thin tree or a column like I was using just before, or something like this where they can still lean on, but maybe they will sometimes miss and will need to balance on their own. And then you can switch to even thinner object like these dog walk legs here. She can't really lean on that object at all, but it's there for moral support, for telling her what to do actually, and for making her believe that she can do it. But again, it takes a lot of muscle, a lot of balance to be able to do that. So don't do too much, progress really slowly, and yeah, don't ask for more that they can do. I noticed even with my dogs that are really good at this, actually, if I practice regularly, that if I don't practice regularly, they can't do it anymore, or they can just lift up a little bit but don't have good duration at all. So yeah, definitely you need to work on those muscle gradually. It's really not an easy trick as far as strength is concerned, but yeah, just try and see. Up to the wall, it's possible with every dog. After that, it gets a little bit more complicated, but well, why not trying?
Strength, balance, and coordination are very important for any performance dog. If you watched my Ready, Steady, Go video, you know how important I think off-leash running and hiking is for conditioning of your dog. But of course, we don't have an access to something as fancy as this every day. So you can actually do a lot even in your living room, like tricks, for example. The tricks explained in this video are perfect for conditioning your dog, for cross-training your dog, for building your dog's strength, balance, and coordination. So if your dog is performing any kind of sports, I definitely recommend teaching the tricks explained in this video.